Welcome back to Boss Economic World, where the economy gets roasted and the truth comes out in full color. Today, we're diving into the latest government efficiency antics that are being touted as the next big cost-saving miracle, or, if you ask some skeptics, a masterclass in bureaucratic hoodwinkery. Let's set the stage. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent recently declared on Fox News that American taxpayers need not fret about the security of their private data, even as Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, affectionately known by its codename DOGE, is busy rummaging through government data in the name of efficiency. Yes, folks, you heard that right. The very same dog that's supposed to guard your bone, or in this case your bank data, is now sniffing around the Treasury's treasure trove. Bessent announced that DOGE has already identified an estimated $50 billion in savings. At first blush, this dazzling figure might have you thinking, finally, some common sense in government spending. After all, if you can save several percent of GDP worth of spending, that could mean real dollars back in our pockets. But let's dig a little deeper and ask ourselves, whose several percent of GDP are we really talking about? Considering that the US GDP hovers around $25 trillion, even a 1 to 2% savings would mean cutting $250 to $500 billion from the federal budget. And while saving money in theory is as appealing as a clearance sale on winter coats in July, the devil, along with some very adamant senators, is in the details. Critics, including Senate Democrats, have been quick to trash-talk what they call a lack of candor about the DOGE team's activities. When efficiency interventions start with a side of secretive IT access, you might wonder if the intended savings aren't just a smoke and mirrors trick to cover up deeper structural failures in our public spending system. Indeed, while Bessent insists that Americans don't have to be concerned about the government accessing taxpayer data, with assurances like read-only access to payment systems and one person looking at an outdated IT system, the fact remains that these initiatives spark alarm bells among privacy advocates and bureaucrats alike. Let's talk tech for a second. Imagine you're running a state-of-the-art modern enterprise, and suddenly half your IT infrastructure is managed by a team that apparently can only muster read-only access. That might not be too worrisome, until you recall that even a read-only view on sensitive payment systems can reveal enough to map out your entire financial operation. According to Bloomberg, DOGE is seeking access to a wide range of taxpayer data, a move that has already prompted lawsuits from attorneys general across 19 states and 3 labor unions. In other words, while Bessent's casual reassurance might put some minds at ease, others see it as an invitation to a potential privacy breach of epic proportions. For context, let's compare this scenario with other public IT modernization efforts. In recent years, several government agencies have been forced to upgrade their outdated systems, a process that, if done right, boosts efficiency and protects data. However, these projects often run into hiccups ranging from budget overruns to security gaps. For example, in 2021, the Department of Defense's $600 million IT overhaul project was delayed due to cybersecurity concerns that could have compromised sensitive national security data. Similarly, if DOGE's initiative is not handled with rigorous transparency and modernized safeguards, we might very well end up with an efficiency program that's more cutting costs than cutting edge. Let's not dance around the elephant or the DOGE in the room here. The timing and rhetoric behind these initiatives are as curious as they come. Bessent's remarks came as part of a broader set of cost-saving measures that seem to echo classic political theater, a sleight of hand meant to distract from deeper long-standing economic challenges. In a period where the U.S. economy is teetering on the brink of recession and consumer confidence is in decline, the notion of saving several percent of GDP by simply peering into outdated IT systems sounds less like groundbreaking reform and more like the economic equivalent of a magician pulling a rabbit out of a hat. Some might say that the promise of a $50 billion saving is a welcome development. After all, the federal deficit has ballooned to levels not seen in decades, approximately $1.3 trillion a month in new debt service obligations at times during the pandemic. But let's be candid, even if DOGE delivers on its promise, is redirecting such savings enough to counterbalance the structural inefficiencies and mismanagement that have plagued our fiscal policies in recent years? Consider this: the U.S. economy in 2023 is under pressure from rising inflation, disrupted supply chains, a shaky labor market, and geopolitical tensions that threaten energy and commodity markets. In such a turbulent environment, a one-off efficiency initiative, however well-intentioned, risks being more symbolic than systemic. And as if our domestic fiscal acrobatics weren't enough to keep us on our economic toes, enter the international arena. Bessent also made no secret of his expectation that Ukraine's President Zelensky will sign an economic partnership agreement with the U.S., ostensibly in exchange for support in its ongoing fight against Russia. The idea here is that by economically binding Ukraine closer to the U.S., President Donald Trump hopes to leverage this relationship against Russian President Vladimir Putin. In Trump's playbook, this is portrayed as a win-win: Ukrainians receive American support, while U.S. taxpayers see a tangible return on the billions previously funneled into Ukraine's defense and economic stabilization. However, history suggests that using international aid as a bargaining chip is fraught with peril. Economic partnerships are intricate, and expecting Ukraine to simultaneously grant access to its critical minerals and purchase U.S. energy exports adds yet another layer of complexity to an already convoluted geopolitical situation. As of October 2023, data indicates that U.S. aid to Ukraine has exceeded $40 billion, a sum that has sparked controversy not just in Congress but amongst the public who wonder if these resources could have been otherwise spent on strengthening domestic infrastructure and combating inflation. Critics argue that the dogged pursuit of external partnerships may end up sidelining pressing domestic needs, further contributing to the economic headwinds facing everyday Americans. Adding to the carnival of economic curiosities is President Trump's newfound crusade against the humble American penny. According to Bessent, Trump is pushing to make the penny extinct, a move that, on the surface, appears to be yet another attempt to trim government spending. While the idea of saving costs by eliminating the penny might sound like common sense, after all, the U.S. Mint reportedly burns through nearly $3 million a year on pennies that barely change hands. Detractors see it as emblematic of a broader trend, curtailing political accountability and stoking the fires of fiscal irresponsibility with flashy, yet ultimately inconsequential, measures. Consider this: eliminating a penny might save a few $1,000,000 here and there, but when weighed against the backdrop of national debt and millions of dollars lost to inefficiencies in major government programs, such a gesture feels like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. In a survey conducted by the Pew Research Center in 2023, over 60% of Americans expressed concern that the government's focus on minor savings was a distraction from the more pressing issue of comprehensive tax and spending reform. So, what do all these moving parts tell us about the state of our economy and government management? At its core, the controversy surrounding DOGE, and Bessent's assurances regarding data security and efficiency, is symptomatic of deeper issues that have long plagued our financial and bureaucratic systems. 1. Bureaucratic inefficiency and data vulnerability. Government agencies are often saddled with outdated IT systems and cumbersome processes. While the promise of $50 billion in savings is tantalizing, the real challenge is modernizing these systems in a way that actually enhances security and efficiency. With high-profile cases of cyber breaches in both the public and private sectors, from the Colonial Pipeline hack to the SolarWinds incident, it's not enough to assure the public that one person is just looking at outdated systems. We need comprehensive, ongoing reforms, not stopgap measures that risk exposing sensitive taxpayer data. 2. The politics of public-private partnerships. The involvement of Elon Musk's team, with its cheekily rebranded name and high-profile backing, in government efficiency efforts is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it promises innovative approaches and the kind of disruptive thinking that traditional bureaucracies have long struggled to deliver. On the other, it raises questions about accountability, transparency, and the potential for conflicts of interest. As seen with other high-stakes public-private partnerships, such as the controversial management contracts in the defense and healthcare sectors, the stakes are too high to let political maneuvering override rigorous checks and balances. 3. Economic distraction amid debt and deficit. The grand promises of saving several percent of GDP come at a time when the U.S. is grappling with unprecedented fiscal challenges. The national debt, which currently exceeds $31 trillion, looms large over all these discussions. Saving costs in one corner of government spending is laudable, but it hardly addresses the broader issue of fiscal mismanagement that spans across decades. Recent research by the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget indicates that without meaningful reform in entitlement programs and tax policies, isolated efficiency measures will have a negligible impact on the overall fiscal health of the nation. 4. Geopolitical ambitions versus domestic realities. The proposal to use economic partnerships with Ukraine as a lever against Russia is fraught with complexity. While it might serve short-term political objectives, leveraging foreign aid and trade agreements as bargaining chips runs the risk of entangling U.S. policy in conflicts that could have severe domestic economic repercussions. Trade tensions, fluctuating commodity prices, and supply chain disruptions are just a few of the challenges that could result from such grand geopolitical gambits. 5. Public trust and political optics. Finally, at the heart of it all lies a pervasive issue of public trust. When taxpayers are told that their data is safe, even as lawsuits pile up and civil servants resign in protest, there's bound to be skepticism. A 2023 Gallup poll showed that only 38% of Americans trust the federal government to manage their personal information responsibly. Efforts like eliminating the penny or touting vague savings figures can only go so far in rebuilding that trust. Instead, what's needed is clear, transparent communication and a willingness to address the real underlying issues head-on. In wrapping up today's episode of Boss Economic World, let's be clear. While the narrative of saving billions and modernizing government might sound like the perfect antidote to our current economic malaise, it risks becoming nothing more than a well-packaged distraction. Instead of merely rebranding inefficiencies as innovative cost saving, what the U.S. really needs is deep, structural reform that tackles the heart of fiscal mismanagement, be it in archaic IT systems, bloated administrative costs, or misguided foreign policy gambits that stretch our resources thin. The idea of making the US government leaner and meaner is undoubtedly attractive in an era when every dollar counts in the midst of a potential economic recession. But let's not be fooled by flashy promises and clever marketing. Saving several percent of GDP is a tantalizing headline, yet history tells us that true reform requires sustained, painstaking effort, not just a few well-publicized cost-cutting maneuvers. For the ordinary viewer and the financial professional alike, the takeaway is simple: pay close attention, ask the hard questions, and demand transparency. Instead of applauding a $50 billion savings claim that might evaporate under scrutiny, we should be holding our elected officials and government agencies accountable for delivering real, measurable improvements in efficiency without compromising privacy or security. In the end, if we're going to brave the economic storms ahead, it's not enough to trim the pennies on the margins. We need a bold overhaul, a veritable revolution in how public funds are managed, how data is secured, and how policies balance domestic needs with international ambitions. Until then, as we watch the government try to make a dog out of its bones, let's keep our eyes open and our wallets ready, because in the world of high-stakes economics, promises can be as fleeting as a meme, and reforms as elusive as that penny the president wants to kill. Remember, folks, in the grand circus of economic policy, the clowns might be entertaining, but it's the tightrope walkers, those who insist on accountability and transparency, who keep the show from toppling over. Stay tuned, stay informed, and as always, keep laughing at the absurdities of it all. This is Boss Economic World signing off until next time, where we'll continue to peel back the layers of government inefficiency and hold these cost-saving claims to the highest standard of economic truth. And don't forget, when the government claims $1 billion saving, check the fine print, because sometimes, it's just another doggone distraction in the economic dog park.